What if you had a guide who could tell you how to bridge a gap between who you are today and who you're destined to be? What if each week you could hear a story of someone who has tried and succeeded, or perhaps tried and failed, but learned something in the process? Limitless Spirit is a weekly podcast where host Helen Todd interviews guests about topics and personal stories on defining life's purpose, pursuing personal growth, and developing a deeper faith in Christ.
Welcome to this episode of the Limitless Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Helen Todd, and my hope is this podcast inspires you to pursue and live out your greater purpose in Christ. This episode is about self-reflection and the sin of envy that sometimes hides behind ambition and other positive qualities, but can affect our lives in a dramatic and painful way. My guest today is Mike Fabarez, author, radio host, and the pastor of Compass Bible Church in Southern California. His new book, Envy, The Big Problem You Didn't Know You Had, just came out, and it is one of the very few books written on this subject. Take time to tune in and find out what are the warning signs that you may struggle with envy, and what are the benefits of living the envy-free life. Hello, Pastor Mike. Thank you for joining me on the Limitless Spirit podcast.
Well, it's great to be here today.
I am excited to talk to you about your latest book. I know you have authored several books, but your latest book is called Envy, The Problem You Never Knew You Had.
Yes, well, it doesn't sound like a very exciting title, but I hope that it's helpful, that's for sure.
Well, you know, what drew me to it is that, honestly, I haven't seen a whole lot of books written about envy. And so with that in mind, I have to ask you, what prompted you to focus on this subject?
Well, the good thing about my life and thinking about the issues of Christians is that I am a pastor and actively involved in all things in our church. And there was just a particular week when it felt like every other problem I was dealing with, the more I gave thought to it, I traced it back to the sin of envy, which I don't normally do, but I started to see that as a recurring pattern. And I thought, wow, I can't think of a single book, at least not a recently written book, about the topic. And I pulled out a little sticky pad and I wrote down on a little note, a book idea, envy, which, I write from time to time, but I only write when publishers ask me. And so sure enough, a couple months later, I was at a conference and a publisher I had published with before came up to me and asked me any ideas, what you working on? And I said, nothing. And then after he walked away, I thought, I did write down an idea. So I called him back over and I said, hey, you know what? I don't know what you think of this, but I was thinking about writing a book on envy. And the guy just lit up. He said, that's such a unique topic. And he got on his phone and he said, there's really not much written on that. That needs to be done. And it was great. He trusted me to write it. And I thought, the more I studied to write this book, the more I thought, this is everywhere and we don't see it. And if you look back, really, in church history, they used to talk about envy all the time, especially in the first 5-6 centuries of the church. All these sermons were preached on the problem of envy, and it was categorized by the church as one of the 7 deadly sins, and it was discussed and preached on all the time. And so here I was trying to look at a topic that had it lied dormant for a long time. And I said, I'm gonna try to tackle this. So Moody was wise, my publisher, to say, let's just keep it short, 125 pages. And the more I studied, of course, the longer I could have written on this topic. But I thought, well, that's a digestible size. Let's just spend half of the book dealing with diagnosing the problem. And the other half, we'll try to see how we can solve it biblically. And so that's what I set out to do. And the response just here in the initial release has been really good. I think a lot of people have said this is right under the surface if you start looking for it. So I'm really glad that there's a book out that's recent, it's new, it's current, and it's about an ancient problem that we all really seem to struggle with at some level.
Well, the title of your book made me look deep into myself. Like, do I have this problem? I didn't think about it. I didn't think I do have it. I mean, I don't stay up thinking, this person has this and I want that. I'm not really very materialistic, but made me think more about it, and we'll get to that a little later. But let's first talk about, why is envy bad? Like, is it all negative emotion, or can there be a positive envy? I mean, what is envy? Essentially, it's
Yeah.
wanting something that another person has and you don't have, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, that's the core of it. And I think if you were just going to talk about that in isolation, you could call it what Exodus 20 calls it in the 10 Commandments. You could call that coveting. And I think it's easy for us to identify that kind of nagging desire for something we don't have. But envy takes it one step further and identifies people in my environment, my surroundings, not someone on TV or distant, but like, who is it in my world that has those things that I have this hankering for? And then I start to get bitter about them. And sometimes that happens even without even noticing. We start being critical of them. And if we were to stop and say, why am I so critical of that person? It may be because they have the objects, the status, the income, the affections of the people that I want. And I don't have those things. And so, yeah, the core of it, you really can't be envious without covetousness. But covetousness in itself, God says, is bad enough because it doesn't allow you to enjoy the things that you have. It always makes you want the things you don't have.
Well, why is it
But
bad
then
to
to say,
want things you don't have? Let's say you found a cool item on Amazon, something super practical and helpful that I don't have, and I saw you using it, and I think, well, this is helpful, so I want it.
yeah, well, and there is a sphere in which that's okay. Just picture a plate full of food. And it's like, well, I got mashed potatoes. I've got some, whatever, roast beef, and I want some mashed potatoes. So I want that, and I have a desire for it, and it's right there, and I'm going to grab it. It's like on Amazon. If it's, $25, I can afford it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to get it. Nothing wrong with that. You can want things. And if they're in your sphere to have them, as long as you're not just craving just selfish, like I want as much as I can have. There's that greed, which is another kind of vice, but the greed of like, I got to have more. I'm never satisfied with what I have. And then there are people that have that. Think about it. There are addicts on Amazon shoppers that just can't get enough. And they have these boxes piled up in the hallway. And it's like, okay, that's a problem. You're greedy, right? But covetousness is really something I can't attain. Like in the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20, it says, don't covet your neighbor's wife. It's, think about that. Like, okay, I can't have her, right? That's my neighbor's wife. So it's something beyond my attainable sphere of this is, I have the wherewithal to get it. If I don't have the wherewithal to get it, it could be a Maserati or a Ferrari or my neighbor's wife or my neighbor's job or my neighbor's income. Those are things I may not be able to get. And it's not like something that's there on my plate. It's on somebody else's plate, right? So I need to see that covetousness is having this really hankering desire for something else. But the book that I wrote is about, now, how do I feel about that guy that has it? How do I feel if I feel like his marriage is better? How do I feel if I feel like his teeth are straighter and he's got more appeal and he makes twice as much as me? I start to get bitter toward him, which